Welcome back to Inspiring Builds. I'm Dan, and today we're going to build a framed full-length mirror and mount it flush on a door. Before starting on the build, measure the door to determine what size will fit. On this door, I wanted it to be 23 inches wide to maximize width, but avoid contacting the door hardware, and with 8-foot doors, making it at least 6 foot tall. If you're new here, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those bell notifications so you don't miss any of these tutorials. I went the custom route, as mirrors at least 6 foot tall were too wide to fit, such as this one at 29 inches wide, and mirrors that were not too wide were too short. Most over-the-door mirrors are 48 inches tall, and this short one on the left is 54 inches. You can tell the huge difference here showing a comparison. Now let's get started on the build. The largest frameless mirror I could find was at a local big box store, measuring 18 inches wide and 68 inches tall, costing around $50. Now that we have the door and mirror dimensions, I use SketchUp to plan out the framing and mounting of the mirror. I used 1x4s for the front of the frame and 1x2s on the back to add strength and depth to the frame, as well as hiding the mounting hardware for the mirror so the frame could sit flush against the door. Take the extra time here when purchasing lumber and find straight pieces or as close as possible. You can eye it up as I do here or place them on the ground. You can see here this piece is bowed and some were much worse. I didn't get the 1x4s as straight as I wanted, so I made sure the sections where I would be cutting the long pieces were pretty straight. I was asked to build a full-length mirror to match the same style as the trim work in the closet, such as what is on the Murphy door. I went with prime boards to save time since the frame will be painted white. For this build, all you need are 2 1x2x8 boards and 2 1x4x8 boards. Before cutting the boards, I put the 1x4s on each side of the mirror to ensure it was the look I was going for. I decided to use a miter saw. If you don't have one, a circular saw, jigsaw, etc. will work, as not a lot of cuts need to be made for this build. Cut the 1x4s first. The cuts we are making first are for the sides of the frame, measuring 66 inches long. Cut both 1x4s and ensure both pieces are the same size. You can also cut them both at the same time as shown here. Double check that both boards are flush with each other before making your cut. Next, measure 23 inches on the remaining 1x4 boards to cut the top and bottom of the frame. Again, ensure both boards are flush with each other on the end before making your cut when cutting both boards at once. Lay out the sides, top, and bottom on a flat surface for a dry fit. Prime boards have one side that is rougher. Place the rough side up, as this will be the back of the frame. With the drill bit slid all the way in, move the slide collar to match the thickness of the material and tighten with the Allen wrench. Next, push the sliders in and move them until the thickness you need aligns with both arrows on the bottom of the jig. With the thickness being just shy of 3/4 of an inch, I set the jig to 5/8 of an inch. Clamp down the jig with the rough side of the board facing up. Make 2 pocket holes on each end of the 66-inch side pieces we cut earlier for the frame. I'm a fan of these jigs as it's super quick and easy to use, as well as it looks professional with no filling or sanding hiding the holes on the back side of the frame. And lastly, it's super strong. With only making 8 pocket holes total, I just used a small R3 Kreg jig. I will provide a link to everything I use for this build in the description below to make it simple for you. Kreg lists a size chart to help determine what size screw to use. I use 1-inch fine pocket hole screws. Ensure the frame is square, and then I prefer to use a clamp to avoid any shifting. Take your time and don't over torque the screws. Clamp and screw in a total of 8 pocket hole screws as shown. The front of the frame is complete. Now it's time to add 1x2s to the back of the frame. I cut both 1x2s together at 73 inches for the sides. I use 1 1/4 inch brad nails to secure the 1x2s to the frame. This video is not sponsored, but Ryobi makes a nice brad nailer, and battery powered tools has changed the game where I rarely use my pneumatic brad nailer. The strongest bond is going to come from using wood glue and clamps securing the 1x2s to the frame. Glue up each 1x2. Take your time to get it aligned, ensuring it's flush with the ends and side of the frame, and then clamp it down. Now it's time to nail it down. I added a nail every 5 to 6 inches. Repeat the same process for the other side. Once the sides are complete, I measured the gap before cutting the top and bottom sections. Cut the top and bottom sections at 20 inches. Do a dry fit first. It was a nice tight fit. Glue up and nail it down, adding 5 brad nails as shown. Repeat the same process for the bottom and the frame is done. Flip the frame over to prep for paint. I use 240 grit sandpaper on a mouse sander. Take your time sanding the front, sides, and inner sections of the frame. Don't worry about the back, as it will be flush against the door when installed. I sped this up as the sanding process is pretty boring. Wear a respirator mask when sanding to protect your health. Sanding also generates a lot of dust particles that will need removed prior to painting. I used a clean, damp microfiber towel to remove the dust particles and kept flipping it over on clean sections, wiping it down until it was clean as shown. I already had white interior semi-gloss paint from Sherwin-Williams on hand that was used on trim work along with a 4-inch roller. Shake the paint well before opening. I poured out and rolled 3 coats of paint covering the front, sides, and inner sections. I did use scrap lumber on both the top and bottom of the frame to allow clearance for the roller when rolling the sides of the frame. The thought process was that it would be much easier to paint now prior to having the mirror installed and not having to worry about taping anything off. I was content with how the paint turned out and let it dry while working on the mirror mounts. I did purchase plastic mirror mounts for about $10, but the mirror was beveled, making the gap on the mirror mounts too large. I went ahead and returned those for a cost savings and grabbed a 1/2-inch plywood scrap piece of lumber and made my own. Setting your tools to the precise height is absolutely essential. If you have a router or table saw, these setup bars save a ton of time and well built. Flip over the router and take the 1/8 inch setup bar, pushing the router down until the router bit contacts the setup bar as shown, and lock the router height into place. Clamp the 1/2-inch plywood down, and I used another scrap piece of straight lumber as a guide for the router. I used a 1/2-inch straight router bit and made 1 pass. I measured 1.5 inches wide and cut the plywood on the miter saw. A 1/2 inch was routed out to support the mirror, and the other 1 inch was to screw into the back of the frame. I then cut each mount 1 inch wide for a total of 10 mounts. I had 1/2 inch screws laying around and used a 1/8 inch drill bit to pre-drill the holes in the mirror mounts. I wanted to countersink the screw heads, so I used a Forstner bit slightly larger than the screw head. Here is a test fit example of how the screw will look. Not only was I going for a flush look on the back, but also wanted to screw into the frame as much as possible to get a strong anchor. I ended up with 10 mounts as mentioned earlier, as a Shopvac Monster ate a couple. The DIY mirror mounts are now set. Flip the frame back over carefully and place the mirror in. Align the mirror so that it has an even 1-inch gap all the way around so that the mirror mounts will fit. Double check the spacing by measuring all sides. Place the mounts in to ensure they fit. I use 3 mounts on each side and 2 mounts on the top and bottom for a total of 10. Now it's time to install the mirror on the door. You can see this oversized closet is nice, but missing one key feature when getting ready, and that's a full-length mirror. It's important to be able to see head to toe when getting ready, especially when you have a pair of shoes for every day of the year. Having a full-length mirror allows you to get a full overview before leaving for the day, where the shorter one cuts off part of the body. I used a metal French cleat that I will place a link in the description. This 12-inch cleat will support up to 100 pounds, which is more than enough for this mirror. First, pop in the level from the back of the mount. The 4 larger screws are for this mount that mounts to the wall, or in our case, a door. Place the other half on the back of the frame and use the 4 smaller screws. This mount is easy to install, sturdy, and can easily slide for adjustments. I double checked the mount was 12 inches and the frame was 23 inches. With the difference being 11 inches, I measured and marked off 5.5 inches on each side of the frame. I then measured and marked a 1/4 inch down from the top of the frame. Align the cleat with the markings and pencil in the mounting holes, evenly spacing them out. Screw in the 4 smaller included screws and the first half is complete. Before installing the cleat on the door, I wanted to measure from the bottom of the cleat to the top of the frame, which was 2.5 inches. To mount the cleat on the door, I use these heavy-duty metal anchors, good for hollow core doors, and Gorilla Glue to put a small amount around the threads. I like this cleat as it came with holes spaced out every inch. Measure the height on the door to mount the French cleat. I took 4 reference points here, 48 inches for a normal over-the-door mirror, 56 inches measuring 8 inches up from the bottom of the door using the 48-inch mirror, and then 73 inches for our mirror, and lastly 81 inches measuring 8 inches up from the bottom of the door using our mirror. I decided to raise the mirror 8 inches from the bottom of the door. This comes out to 81 inches high, but then I took the 2.5 inches just measured from the bottom of the cleat to the top of the frame and subtracted it from 81 inches, making our final mark at 78.5 inches. Lastly, I measured 5.5 inches over. Align the cleat with the marks and adjust the cleat until it's level. Once level, pencil in the 4 anchor holes, evenly spacing them out. Apply a small amount of Gorilla Glue around the thread. This specific Gorilla Glue expands 3 to 4 times. Drill in the anchor into the door, aligning the anchor with the center of the pencil mark. This first one was tough to drill in, so I decided to pre-drill the last 3 holes. I switched up the process with the glue. I found it was easier to insert the anchor partially and then apply a small amount of Gorilla Glue around the threads as the anchor was slowly getting tightened. Once the anchors are installed, the cleat is ready to be attached to the door. Use the 4 screws included with the anchors and screw in each side first, making any small adjustments as needed to ensure the cleat is level. Finish by screwing in the final 2 screws. Hang the frame mirror on the cleat as shown and make any final adjustments left or right. Here is a final comparison with the previous smaller mirror versus our new full-length mirror. Here is showing the gap between the door and the back of the mirror. As you can see, it's pretty flush. The door opens and closes smoothly. I really appreciate you watching. If you like this video, I have another one queued up for you in the corner that you'd probably like as well. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like, comment, and share, and hit that notification bell so you can get notified when I release new videos.